Welcome, gamers! We're back with another classic arcade game review, and today we're going to take a look at Konami's Time Pilot from 1982. So, this is a primitive multi-directional shooter with endless scrolling that shares many similarities to the classic arcade shooter Asteroids. So, the game was developed and published by Konami, and it was first released to arcades in 1982. It was later ported to the ColecoVision and Atari 2600 a year later in 1983. And there were also a number of re-releases for the Sony PlayStation, the Game Boy Advance, and Xbox 360. There was also a few clones for more primitive computer systems like the Commodore 64. They were just basically repackaged and renamed, but pretty much the same game. And so the game was developed by legendary game developer Yoshiki Okamoto, who can also be accredited for his work with arcade titles such as Konami's Gyruss, and he later worked on titles for Capcom, including the development of Final Fight and Street Fighter II, among others. In Time Pilot, players take control of a futuristic fighter jet, battling out the skies against everything from biplanes to fighter jets to helicopters and even alien spaceships. So the game is essentially free roaming. Unlike with Asteroids, where you're positioned in a fixed playing field, the screen will simply continue scrolling for as long as you move within a particular direction. So the game is extremely challenging, which is actually good because who wants to play a game that's easy, right? And it's just no fun. So after beating the initial stages, the game will loop players back to stage 1, subsequently increasing the difficulty with each successive completion of the game. And it gets really hard. I think the last play I did, which was not the one I recorded here, I beat the game 4 times, and it got so hard, and that was on level 2 from the actual factory settings. So it gets really, really tough. Very challenging game. I do like the free roaming abilities of this game, though. That's something that you really didn't have in Asteroids. You were kind of in a fixed playing field. You could move about freely, but you couldn't leave the boundaries of the screen, it seemed like. So anyways, the stage scenes depict battles in the sky surrounded by clouds, as you can see here, as well as asteroid belts in another stage with enemy spaceships. So you're like battling alien spaceships in one stage. You also battle, you can see here, there's helicopters now. We were first fighting biplanes. This is kind of like a boss enemy right here. And so that's just it. Each stage also features an end boss, always surrounded by enormous swaths of enemy combat ships. So they're heavily guarded, and it makes it really, really difficult to get a clear shot on them while having to maneuver out of the way of all these other enemies. I found the best way to defeat the end bosses is to fire directly from behind them. And so some of the enemies have secondary weapons, like homing missiles, etc., that will follow you around until you either shoot them down or they nail you. Other enemies, like the alien spaceships, will often try and simply crash into you. They do like this kamikaze attack, where they just basically just try to run into you from any direction that you're going. And so, fans of the classic Asteroid arcade title will really appreciate this game. And it's funny because I grew up in the 1980s and I don't remember this game. I don't remember it. But you know what? I vaguely remember a lot of things from the 1980s. That's the thing. Back in the 80s, arcades were huge. I grew up in Southern California, and we had just ginormous arcades, like ones like Scandia, where they had literally hundreds of arcade games pitted across a 3-story building, so they were everywhere. So it's kind of odd that I don't remember this game, but it may be like many of the arcade titles out there, that even ones from the 90s that just weren't mass produced, or in other cases, some just weren't even ever really officially released. That was kind of the situation with Primal Rage 2. They had put out some arcade prototypes, just a handful of them, and then they scrapped the game. And then years later, this guy Gruntzilla gets the game working. So anyways, here we are. We're in the asteroid belt, and we're battling spaceships. And you can see they kind of move in like a haphazard style of movement instead of their weapons. The good thing is that you don't have to worry so much about running into the asteroids themselves. It's just the enemies. And so once you get past this part, it basically just loops you back to the beginning of the game. And it starts to get super tough. I mean, it's like twice as many bad guys. You're fighting twice as many enemies for each time that you beat the game. So that was kind of typical of games in the late 1970s, early 1980s. You would beat the game and it would start you back off the beginning and just make it 10 times harder. So anyways, many thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with our latest videos. And if you like, go ahead and feel free to watch the rest of this video. And until next time, take care.
You